Sunday. Let's start on our backs this morning. So, just something where you feel supported and where you can ease into. If you want to utilize either of the props we're using, so we're going to have two blankets or two towels or a combination. If you want to use either to set up, feel free. But our primary objective here is just to chill out. And so, as we feel that mat beneath us, let's just feel into how the breath is traveling, and as it is traveling and inflating the lungs, how that's impacting the physicality of your body. And then maybe give a pause at the top of the inhale so that you can notice and feel the inflated body. And then as you exhale, feel how that contraction of musculature, contraction of scaffolding feels against your body as well. And we'll just cycle through here some nice, fluid, easy, delicate rounds of breath. Or to experience the end of that exhale breath in a way where it allows you to land more deeply against your mat. And then think about the end of your exhale breath in the way that we've been thinking about the end of the inhale breath. And so those become two equivalent experiences mirroring one another in different states of being, one full and one empty. And we just feel into that. And we'll give ourselves about 60 more seconds here. Experiencing the end of the inhale and experiencing the end of the exhale as these two separate but mirroring experiences of one another. And then when it feels appropriate, let's utilize an inhale to bring our knees into a bent position if they're not already, so the kneecaps can point towards the ceiling. And then, if I can get a good view here, we'll push down into the toe mounds and lift the heels so that we get a little angular pressure in the middle of the thighs. And from that, just extend your arms overhead towards the space behind you, not towards the ceiling. And then drive into those toe mounds and use that toe mound pressure to help continue to elongate the arms overhead, again, towards the space behind you, not towards the ceiling. And then keep the arms where they are, but relax the heels back down. And take that big inhale breath so that you fill this upper half of your torso. Really drive into the very end of the inhale to make that happen. And then hold the breath and see what happens on the backside of the body, that posterior chain response, specifically at that thoracic shelf. And then when it feels appropriate, just exhale and let the arms bend to cactus and let the shoulder girdle relax. Note how that shoulder girdle is relaxed. You'll want to keep that relaxation even as we move the arms to capture our knees, which we're going to pull closer to the torso. Shoulder girdle remains relaxed as you squeeze the hips here. Squeeze the shins or hamstrings that gives that hip compression. And then eventually the feet will come back down to the mat and we'll let the knees fall to one side or the other, whatever side feels most appropriate. Eventually we can utilize that opposite hand to help press up into a seat. And from the seated space, let's bring the bottoms of our feet together. And so here we're going to clasp on the toe mounds ideally. If that's not working, you can use the ankles, but toe mounds is the ideal clasp for us. And then think about wherever we are, whether we're on the ankles or the toe mounds, rocking back into a vertical spine. So that may involve the feet peeling away from the mat or adjusting, right? If you're on the ankles, you have a little bit more space. You may have a little bit more space, but you really need to work hard to keep the energy zipping you in so that the spinal column can elongate vertically. We'll hold this for about 15 more seconds. Don't lose sight of where the head is. Think about the cervical spine extending up through the crown of your head into that verticality. Yeah, nice, Heather. And then we'll relax. And as you relax, let your elbows work out towards your thighs and just let your torso tilt forward as far as is available to you. So elbows, just finding those thighs, looking for this medial line expansion. If it feels advantageous, you can wrap the fingers underneath the legs, ankles, feet. And by pulling up with the fingers, you'll pull the elbows down. That can help with some expansion. That is an optional adjustment in this space. Each time you cycle through the breath, specifically on the exhale half of the cycle, see if there is further expansion available to you, either or maybe both, kind of on an axis of capacity in the tilt forward of the torso or the exterior external rotation of the hips. And we'll give ourselves just about 20 more seconds here. And then slowly we'll walk ourselves back up into a vertical seat. And you can extend both legs for the moment. So just a little neutral reset. Then we will bring our left knee into a bent position, bottom of the left foot neutral against the ground. You can get that as close to the heel, close to the glutes as feels comfortable. The heel as close to the glutes as feels comfortable. And the left hand is going to plant behind us. Right elbow to that right thigh, and we'll just rotate the spine here. The right hand can help guide that left shoulder back if that feels advantageous for you. It does not need to. It can kind of hang freely as well. Or to slow down your breath. It's super easy when we get in these exaggerated twists for the nervous system to panic, especially if we have some rigidity in the spinal column. And so then you start these really short, really panicked breaths. Try to have a twist that allows for the maximum capacity of your breath while giving you the rotational experience that is most advantageous for you. Last 15 seconds here. Pay particular attention to the shortness on the inhale. It's just, we have the lungs rotated. We have some compression there. It's super easy to short yourself in your breath. And then when it feels advantageous, we'll come back to neutral. We'll extend that left leg and just give yourself a moment to find staff so that you feel this vertical reset. And then we'll head to side two. Right knee bends, right foot plants, right hand comes down behind us, left elbow to the left thigh, and we create that rotation. Left hand here can work that right shoulder if it feels accessible. And then once we get the physicality of the shape set up, our primary focus is how do we find our way into a breath that is advantageous and allows for the expansion of the shape, not the contraction. Short, stunted breaths will continually contract out of the shape, where we're looking for long, smooth, fluid breaths that allow us to expand. And we got about 20 more seconds here. And we'll come back to neutral. Extend that right leg. Once again, find the verticality of our spine. And then let's engage with our first prop. From shelf for disco and hot dog, this is my primary option. We're running across the back at the thoracic joint. So if you know you're very rigid there, this may be too much and you may want to go to just a shelf fold. If you know you have a lot of space there, you may want to go to a roll. No matter what your choice is, know you're not stuck there. I'm going to throw a roll back there. We are looking here to hit the blanket just below the shoulder blades. So as we lower down, our shoulder blades can make their way onto the mat, and then we can open up to cactus with the arms. The goal is to take as much stability as we can and transition it through this back bend. And so the stability is the hips are anchored and the shoulders are anchored. And then we can just breathe. And so there's this very prosperous kingdom. And it is run by this very open-minded king. Each little territory of the kingdom is more or less independently run. Now, they, of course, all these territories pay their dues, their taxes to the king and the kingdom itself. And in return, they get their protection and infrastructure. But this king and his open mindedness allows each of these territories to be run very, very differently. And so they are. But each of them is prosperous in their own way, and their own individual prosperity benefits the kingdom, and the kingdom becomes more prosperous as a whole. And that works out for a long time. Remember, especially if you're feeling that prop significantly, that we want to be able to slow down our breath. We also want our breath to be full and complete. And that completeness really requires both edges, both ends, both sides of the breath to be full experiences. We'll give ourselves about 60 more seconds here. And when it feels appropriate, let's let both knees fall over towards the left. So we'll inhale and bring our knees into a bent position. If they're not, then let them fall to the left. And we're going to press ourselves up so that we can access our prop. We should still have some memory of kind of where that prop was hitting. We're going to take our second prop and stack that on top of the first. Again, how you stack this is completely dependent on what's going to provide you the most benefit. Feel free to adjust if you get into a shape that you're not. We're looking here. We're going to side bend over this. We want the blanket, the prop, to be right at that same mid-body space, so just below the shoulder blade. So as you come down on this, we're trying to like continue that sensation wrapping now around the side of your body. That bottom arm, left arm, extends straight out. It becomes a rest for the head. The right hand can be anywhere, tucked behind you, in front of you, overhead. But the goal here is to continue this capacity for side bend expansion. Remember that you have the opportunity to roll and fold and adjust so that you get the height that most benefits you. I think the key, aside from our ability to breathe, is that we find that same spot. We're really looking to address the thoracic joint. And so for a very long time, this kingdom thrives until one year it doesn't. There's a massive drought. And so the grain producers fail nearly everywhere. And because the grain producers fail nearly everywhere, the livestock producers fail nearly everywhere. And the blacksmiths, in turn, fail nearly everywhere. And the leathermen fail nearly everywhere. And the kingdom comes to a grinding halt everywhere except one territory that is continuing to thrive and produce. And so the king almost is duty bound to figure out what is going on in this territory. He gathers his round table and they head out. To this territory. When they get there, sure enough, they see thriving farmers and thriving blacksmith, thriving leather producers, this kingdom is certainly robust in every way. And so they start asking around if the weather has been any different, and no, it hasn't. We'll give ourselves about 30 more seconds here. Remember that breath. Experience the inhale inflation, the exhale deflation. And then when it feels appropriate, we'll use that right hand to press ourselves up. Let the knees swap their direction, and we can head right down. Again, you should have some memory sensation there that allows you to find that spot. We're looking to really find our way into a spot where we can settle and benefit. Maybe benefit and settle. Benefit is the primary objective. Settling should be a byproduct of that. Feel the space you've created on that left side and try to mirror it on the right. As the king and his guard make their way through this territory, one of the things they start to realize immediately is a lot of the people here don't speak the official language of the kingdom. And they find that to be a significant obstacle in terms of communicating, obviously, but also in getting information. And so that starts to become rather frustrating for the king and his guard. They end up having to ask 5 or 6 different groups of people before they get an answer on the weather, and 5 or 6 groups of people before they get an answer of where the leader of this territory is. Eventually, they're pointed to a property up on top of a hill that's surrounded by all this lush vegetation. And there's this beautiful road, maybe private drive, up to this space, this compound. And the king and his guard make their way up there, and they're greeted and welcomed into the home of the leader of this territory. And they ask again, they confirm, has the weather been different here? Have you guys received more rain? Is the drought not happening? King says no. Or the leader there says no, the drought is happening for sure. King says, well, how is everything still working here? What's the magic? Are you doing some type of witchcraft? The leader of this territory says no. He says, there's a lot of different wonderful ideas from the people of this community, and they've brought them together, and those ideas have sustained this place. This doesn't make any sense to the king. And his guard and the king, they're all relatively agitated. They've traveled a long ways. They're hungry. They've had to have multiple conversations just to get a piece of information that they feel should be readily available. And so
Without the customary courtesy or traditional kindness of this king, he kind of gruffly starts to ask what the deal is. Why the people here, or many of the people here, aren't speaking the official language of the kingdom. And so the leader of this space, we have about 50 more seconds here. The leader of this space, this territory, says, follow me. And he takes him out in the back of his little compound. And there's this koi pond, and there's these beautiful gardens. And shading the garden and the koi pond, there is this massive ancient oak tree. And the leader of this territory says, do you see this tree? And they're like, yeah, we see the tree. It's a giant tree in the middle of your backyard. We obviously see the tree. What's the point of this? When it feels right, when you feel ready, we'll press ourselves up, returning to a space where we can access our props. And here we're going to look to create a block. Now, like a traditional block, you'd have the choice for height and depth. If you want to make this a double prop, you're welcome to. I'm certainly not going to do that, but you're welcome to. We're headed into a bridge, so onto our backs once again, lifting and settling that block-like blanket underneath our tailbone, and then just relaxing in, feeling that ease and stability, and the transition at that thoracic spine, that area we've been so targeted now, just able to land and become an anchoring point as opposed to a targeting point. So we can get a nice solid reset. The goal here is to have the prop low enough so that you get that drop, so that the thoracic spine really does feel stable, but at the same time underneath the sacrum enough so that your sacrum feels stable. There's a real fine access of stability there because of the softness of the blanket. If you get too far, that sacrum can kind of roll off, and then you can be in an unstructured shape. So make sure that you're finding that access of stability in your blanket prop, and then just settle in. This is a thing that sometimes happens, doesn't always happen, but when you do a lot of lifted, elevated thoracic spine work, and then you end up lowering that down while elevating another portion, sometimes it can feel like there's no elevation at all, right? Like you're still in this neutral flat plane, even though we have that low back bend and that anchoring. It just depends on how much change we crafted around the thoracic spine, but maybe an opportunity to observe how the spine has responded to the work we've done. See how your body feels post thoracic series. And so they're all kind of extra frustrated now after this obvious question of, do they see this tree? The leader of this territory goes over and he reaches up and he plucks a leaf off of this old oak. He brings it over to the king and he hands it to him. And he says, if I give you this leaf, could you grow it into a thriving oak tree? King looks at the leaf, throws it on the ground, and says, "No, are we done playing games?" And the leader of this thriving territory looks back at the oak and he says, "No, a leaf alone can't thrive as an oak tree. A root alone can't thrive as an oak tree. A trunk alone can't thrive as an oak tree. A branch alone can't thrive as an oak tree. You're right." And the king and his guard are just over the top frustrated now. Just, what is your point? Why are we doing this? Why are you wasting our time? Why haven't you offered us food? Eventually, the assistants to this leader come in and they usher everyone back in for a dinner. The mood stays tense. But as nourishment starts to fill the bellies, there's a softening of the anger, and the conversation turns back to why this leader is allowing people in the kingdom to not speak the official language of the kingdom. Just allowing that anchoring at the thoracic spine. And so, receiving this question, the leader of the territory turns back, gazes out into the backyard, points to the oak tree and says, "Do you see that oak tree?" And immediately tensions rise back up again. They're like, what is this guy doing? Why won't he answer this question? And so he comes in and he is carrying or he pulls out a leaf from a bowl again. He says, can this leaf thrive by itself? Everyone shakes their head. He says, no, you're right. In order to be a thriving oak tree, you need roots, you need a trunk, you need branches, you need leaves, you need all of these elements. And the king now pounds his fist on the table. He says, enough. Why are you allowing people in our kingdom to not speak the official language? And at this point, tensions are flaring, burning, rising. And the assistants of the king and the assistants of the leader of this territory kind of both come in and they say, okay, it's time for bed. It's late. And the two groups are separated. They go to their separate sleeping quarters. Last 30 seconds here. And when it feels appropriate, we will lift our belt line high enough to slide that prop out from underneath us, release our tailbone back down to the mat. This is, again, one of my favorite sensations. Again, possibility may not happen for you, but it's certainly a possibility. When you lower yourself out of a supported bridge shape, it can feel like your tailbone is now below the rest of the spine, even though it is neutral with the mat. Doesn't always happen, may not happen for you, but an opportunity to observe how the spine is feeling against this neutrality, kind of broken out vertebrae by vertebrae as we settle here. And let's just add a little dynamic knee sway. This will be a relatively short experience, but allow for some exploration of rotation, some exploration of possibility here. And then eventually we'll bring our knees back to neutral. We'll grab a blanket prop, a towel prop. We want that towel length. So from shelf fold to unfolded once if you're using a blanket. And then we're going to roll that for a little ankle support. So you don't need to be super specific in your roll. We just want enough space we can tie that over the ankles, let the bottoms of the feet come together, let the knees fall out wide, let the ankles be supported by that prop, and then just settle into what should be a very receptive spine. And once again, slow your breath.
drift back to that conscious experience of the first half of your breath. That's the inhale, and the second half of your breath is the exhale. Add those pauses at the top and the bottom. We'll give ourselves about 60 more seconds here. And as it feels appropriate for you, we'll bring our knees back to neutral. Pull that prop out. And one more time, maybe with a little bit more space this time, we'll let the knees rock so that we can explore. Eventually, we'll let the knees come back to neutral. And as they do, we'll ask ourselves if there's anything that we might want, need, or benefit from prior to Shavasana. And if there is, we'll offer that to ourselves now. If we have everything that we could possibly need, then we will drift into some stillness. Find a stillness that will be supportive of our practice. And so the next morning, king, all the men, the leader of this territory get together, and the king says, they sit down at the table. The king says, we're not leaving this table until you answer the question. Why are you allowing people who don't speak the official language to be in the kingdom? The leader of this territory turns to the tree. King says, no, I don't care about your oak tree. We're not leaving this table until you answer the question. And the leader again turns to the oak tree and says, hold on, king, hold on. I view the territory like I view the oak tree. It is a sum of its parts, but each part is also necessary. We overcame the drought. We're thriving through the drought because the farmers from the east brought their new irrigation techniques. The herbalists from the west brought different drought-resistant herbs. The builders from the north built efficient water storage systems. Each and every piece of our society comes together to build a cohesive unit. And through that unit, we're not only integrated, we're thriving, we're strong, and we're standing tall like the oak tree in your kingdom. We'll start to bring some movement to our fingers and our toes. Into our wrists and our ankles, up into our elbows, up through our shoulders, into our hips, down to our knees. Let that space in the torso move, feel the spine move, feel the neck and the head move. Eventually, the entirety of the body moves, and with that movement, we'll transition from the shapes we are in back into a seat. In this seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes close. And with our next inhale, we'll bring our hands together. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you think about the oak tree or the oak trees within your life and see if they might benefit from leaves or branches or trunks, maybe roots. See how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Sunday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you. My prediction is no class next Sunday because people are going to be out of town for the holiday, but we should be back on Monday, and we will be back tomorrow night for sure. Love the heck out of you. Have a beautiful night or week, and I'll see you soon. Mwah.